the delivery of services of what comes under our umbrella of Army Family Covenant. And in this month, which happens to be the 3rd year anniversary of the Army Family Covenant, you know, it's sort of worth reminding ourselves, as General Lynch would do if he were here sitting, and he is the co-chair along with Ms. Hammock of the Services and Infrastructure Core Enterprise. And he would say that the Army won't break because of the frequent multiple deployments and the fact that we've been at this persistent conflict thing for 9+ years, mainly because of our magnificent soldiers. But it could break if we don't focus on our families, and that's what this particular initiative is, and that's why it's such a huge deal. It represents an enterprise-wide commitment to our families, to our soldiers, an enduring support to our wounded warriors, an enduring support to the families of our fallen soldiers. So it is a big deal, and the multiple family forum sponsored by AUSA here during this week is surely a testament to that. Now, you know, since 2007, we've doubled, the Army has doubled the amount of resources it is placing in this large constellation of programs called the Army Family Covenant, and that is certainly significant. But that, you know, alone is not reason enough to apply a business transformation approach. I mean, we owe it to ourselves in the Army. We owe it to our families to, you know, find ways to deliver those services in the most efficient way, in applying best value, you know, without sending the false signal to our families that we're trying to compromise on the promise that we've made. And now the rub is it's easier said than done. Okay, you know, we in the Army do a great job of responding to problems. Okay, we do a wonderful job of that. We do not so good of a job of reviewing and evaluating outcomes, especially data-based outcomes. You know, we do a great job in the Army of creating programs. I mean, do we not? But we do not so good of a job of making them user-friendly, focusing on the customer, and executing them efficiently. We do a great job in the Army of across our organizations, across our commands, of mounting campaigns. We've got campaign plans all over the place, but we do an inadequate job across our respective organizations, across our commands in the enterprise, of synchronizing our respective activities, of integrating across a spectrum of different organizations and commands in the Army, and many of those organizations which have something to do with this thing called the Army Family Covenant. Over 400 programs are connected together in some way to provide services to our families, and because of that, applying the principles, the business transformation principles, cost culture principles, we decided to take a holistic approach. And something that we had not done because we were just eager to find ways to spend the money smartly and build the programs and show our commitment across the Army to our families. I mean, that was job one. But we wanted to take a holistic approach and connect the dots across those 400 plus programs and make sure we're using the money that we have been given as stewards, use the money wisely, deliver the services smartly and efficiently, and certainly meet the needs. The SICE, the Services and Infrastructure Core Enterprise, perfect forum to do that because many of the organizations that deliver, and IMCOM is not the only one, mind you, many of the organizations that deliver the Army Family Covenant are nested in this core enterprise led by Secretary Hammock and General Lynch. IMCOM is a partner, is one, but Medical Command is another, the Surgeon General, the Chief of Chaplains, the Assistant Secretary for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Installations, Energy and Environment, the DAG1, pretty much all together deliver what's called the Army Family Covenant. Interestingly, though, it's only about 80% because there are others outside of that network, you know, some in DOD, for example, that aren't part of this enterprise. So we'll get there someday. So we launched this holistic review, and we tried to do three things. First, identify some gaps and overlaps, you know, as you might expect that there might be some when you've got 400 programs. and uncertain whether you've attacked all the problems sufficiently, and discover that you may be tripping over each other in your eagerness to deliver services. And then perhaps recommend areas that we need some synchronization and perhaps some connection or unification or consolidation. And lastly, just help our customers, okay? We've got to remember our customers are out there, and help them navigate, through this maze of 400 or so programs. So some examples of where it's led us. We found that we are spending, as an Army, about $1/3 billion on programs to strengthen relationships, okay? A big deal, but mostly in isolation from one another. Things like the military family life consultants that we have across the span of our installations, forward and here in the U.S., military one-source counseling programs, the chaplain strong bond programs, and now we've got the comprehensive soldier fitness. And so it's led us to try and focus on, how do you deliver a balanced menu in such a way that it's coherent, and in to apply a musical analogy, it's an orchestra of programs as opposed to a bunch of musicians playing well but independently off on their own. Secondly, we discovered we're spending about $500 million on child and youth programs, okay, to take care of our children and focus on their resiliency during this persistent conflict. But we've done that with little recognition of applying that money where we can get the best bang for the buck, because there have been a wide variety of studies done out there that show where you can best promote resiliency in children. So taking advantage of those studies and the data that we have collected, it allows us to focus our investment on where we know we can get the greatest value for our kids and our families. Another example, in our haste to support families, we put together multiple programs that address employment assistance for our spouses, employment assistance for life after the military. So it's logical to try and streamline those programs. And then lastly, we also found that we've got some bifurcated programs as well. And when you have bifurcated programs, it leads to inconsistent delivery of services. We found we developed 3 separate active, guard, and reserve separate management and oversight systems in support of our Survivor Outreach Services program. Okay, this is one Army, 3 programs. I mean, we could do better than that. So the bottom line in looking at the Army Family Covenant, and this is just one example of how we've applied these principles in our particular core enterprise, you can see how we can improve. We can improve business operations. We can improve the quality of the programs that we're delivering services for. We can improve how we support our families and soldiers, our customers. And through this enterprise and sort of business transformation approach, and it's not all about saving money, okay? I want to be very clear about that, especially with this particular program. We're not about trying to cut corners and cut costs. It's about delivering the programs better, okay? So it's not, people sometimes think we're trying to cut programs. In the Army Family Covenant case, we are absolutely not doing that. And you heard the Chief and Secretary say that and emphasize that in multiple speaking engagements over the course of the week. But we can do better. We can do better with what we have. And so Army Family Covenant is an example of that. We can do that without compromising on any commitment that the Army's made to fulfill the Family Covenant. We can do that without degrading the resource levels that we're applying to the Family Covenant. And we can do it without cuts to funding. So service efficiencies, contract efficiencies, organizational efficiencies, and in the end, we believe we'll have a better program for the Army. That's it for me. Thanks.
Bob. Thanks, John. And Bob, thanks. I'm the last guy on the last panel, last forum of USA before you go off to dinner. So, and I'm just looking over here at my efficiency review in terms of it's about the 20% cut of efficiency we need to do. So we're cutting all the funds down here. All these initiatives are gone. That's kind of a budget approach. And I guess going back, I'll talk to 2 things really. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Army Management Enterprise as to why we won't do that. So calm down over there. That's why they put me in there, wouldn't throw anything at me. We will cut the lawyers, though. That's part of the 15 to 20% that will go. But I do want to talk a little bit about the Army Management Enterprise, and then talk to some of that is in terms of a form and why we have it. And I'm going to get into two initiatives that, from a perspective of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Financial Management and Comptrollership, that we have within the Business Transformation Plan. First of all, I'll talk about the Army Management Enterprise. When we started the core enterprises, and we stepped in about a year ago, the new Secretary of the Army came in, and then the new CMO started looking around and dialoguing that, when the call came in on things like Fort Hood, or the call came in on something like the Arlington National Cemetery, or that you had to do things like efficiency reviews, and said, okay, let's get at looking at how we best use across the enterprise, that we needed to still have that role underneath the Title X responsibilities of individuals like the Honorable Hammock in terms of IE&E, and underneath ASALT, that we needed to ensure that we had a forum for bringing those together and dialoguing, discussing those issues. And so when you start looking at things like policies, resources, objectives and goals, and you wanted to make sure that the whole enterprise was on those, and you started doing measurements of performance, you wanted to ensure that the Army Management Enterprise, from a headquarters DA perspective, had everything integrated and on a common theme. When you got things like we're talking about readiness, not at any cost, but doing it under informed decisions, ensuring that we had a cost-informed type decision across the enterprise, we needed to bring those together, not just anymore just headquarters DA, but we needed to bring together the elements of the core enterprise with the headquarters DA and bring them together on a common objective and a common approach. So I sit, because the FM is not as, doesn't have a single stovepipe. We go across the enterprise with resources. I sit as Executive Secretary that is chaired by the CMO with the Vice Chief of Staff as the Vice Chair, bringing issues to a board that the Army Management Enterprise looks at. So for instance, when General Durbin talked about dialoguing discussions such as the policies, the R4 Gen policies, or bringing together an Army campaign plan to ensure that we're all agreeing upon individual pieces of the enterprise as far as those objectives and those goals we're trying to achieve against the SecArmy's approach and a strategy, that we integrate those back through the Army Management Enterprise. So we've been doing that. We had our first a couple sessions. Our next one's on 4 November. We vet those things through that forum and trying to ensure that we do approach things as enterprise in a best enterprise approach without violating the individual prerogatives or the authorities of those individual Title X responsibilities and authorities underneath the ASAs. And I think so far we're very successful at that, and we're getting better and better at it. Some of the tools that you've already heard about, the Army Campaign Plan. For the first time, we're starting to put some of those things across the business enterprise, those things that help the Army generating force run underneath the CMO, bringing those together underneath the Army Campaign Plan, which is the execution piece, if you will, the op order of the plan for the Army. It is now got measurable metrics in it and performance metrics that we'll plan to bring back for report to the Army Management Enterprise for review, see are we on track to where we said we're going as an enterprise, and adjust accordingly. Not only in terms of the objectives themselves to be achieved, but also are we getting the benefits that we said we're going to for the resources that we're going to put out there, which makes it kind of leads into how do we do it. I'm going to show you a couple slides. I'm trying to be more efficient, Bob, and use less slides, but I thought I'd throw a few up there. Part of it you've already heard from across the enterprise. I can't tell you what we're spending where all the time. We budget real well for it, but I can't tell you necessarily did we execute it as well to the penny. You heard ranges of between 50 to 71 billion. Mine was somewhere off between that, but somewhere in that range between 0 and 100 billion, I think is where it was, Terry. Need to do a little better of that. Underneath the CFO Act, for instance, you got to have reportable. We should be able to report to you where we're spending our resources and be auditable. But I don't want to talk about that at this stage of the game. What I really want to talk about, we'll meet the law. By 2017, we're supposed to be auditable. What's really more important is that we've got within a transformation plan a financial improvement plan that will get us to where we heard some of the things that this table talked about today. And that's, you know, can I start making cost-informed decisions? Can I tell you where my resources are? Can I tell you where my equipment is? And can I tell you, is it usable, and is it what you're supposed to have, where you're supposed to have it? Can we support the R4Gen processes and policies with the resources that we've got, or do we need more? Can I defend what I already have? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about both the financial improvement, and then I'll get to what you've already heard an awful lot about, and that's cost management, which helps us do cost-informed decisions. What the SecDef underneath, you know, Bob Hale, so Bob Durbin, Bob Spear, and Bob Hale have been working real hard on efficiencies, but also to make sure that in terms of our financial improvement plan, which is inside our transformation plan, is looking at those things that we manage Department of Defense and we manage the Army by. And so we started focusing, instead of just pure, you know, valuation of equipment. I mean, I'm not sure how much a, you know, AH-64 is worth right now if there's been flown so many hours. What's more important is I know what state is it in, where is it at, and can I prove its existence, and how usable and when will it need to be, you know, maintained. Can the AMC see it and see how much it's going to cost, and when is it supposed to be there for improvement? So we're focusing on those things, again, that budgetary data, the financial data that most people manage by within, as well as existence and completeness of the equipment. So our financial improvement plan between now and 2015, as now inside our Army campaign plan with measurable performance objectives against it, we'll look at those assets, existence and completeness. We've taken off a set of those, and I'll get to those in a minute, to where the highest value ones, the one we think are most important to start with. And then approaching it from where can we best improve. To do that, we know we've got to also identify those places we have the biggest problem, and we've got to go against it with systems that can support. Because one of the things we've got right now, that, you know, we've got systems like StanFin, so that we're very good at recording budgetary data, but not very good at really audible financial statements or providing us the details of the cost of what we're doing, and particularly down at the lower levels, really driven to departmental reporting, which doesn't help the commander, doesn't help the core enterprises execute as well. So we're going to make sure that we're fielding new financial management systems, and whether that's logistics modernization plan, which has financial, GCCS Army, or General Funds Enterprise Business System. So go to the next slide, please. So, and I know this is hard to see back there. So what we started doing an approach over the next 5 years that takes a look at our financial systems and where we're putting those, and try to improve as we go along in ensuring proper controls that are built into the system, that we go through and look at the processes down to the installation level, back up all the way through the enterprise to the Army, to see how funds are being spent and ensuring proper controls. And we teach as we go through, as we field these systems, we change how we work. We start working down at the installation level. We're going, first of all, if you can see the first set of the red, light green, and dark green, we're going to go through each one of those first waves of deployment of those systems and start auditing at those locations. So that we start training not just the financial folks. That's the other thing this approach is. You've ever heard here in terms of an enterprise approach. If I try to do this type of look and review of a financial improvement just from a financial perspective, I won't get the end-to-end process. I won't get the ASALT to understand with me, you know, when we do procure to pay and we're buying things, it impacts the whole enterprise. And so I need the acquisition folks, I need the logisticians who actually receipt the goods, and I need those individuals who are providing the funds to all be on the same sheet of music and understand what they're getting for their money, and then understand that, in fact, it's documented that what they spent those funds and what they received for it. So our whole approach to this thing is we're fielding new systems. We go through it, audit across waves. So GFIBS, for instance, as we field General Funds Enterprise Business System, in 2011, we'll start our first audit down at the Wave 1 sites, which starts at Fort Stewart, Fort Benning, and Fort Jackson. And then next year, we'll go through 12 sites at one time. We'll do a full audit of statement of budgetary resources and existence and completeness of equipment. So again, helping the enterprise see what they have and what they're spending. Also important in this is and I'll talk a little bit when I get to the cost piece of it, GFIBS is also changing how people are working. So we need to make sure that people are understanding the new processes, they're sustaining the controls over it, and they're using the new tools, that they're properly trained, and they're involved to understand that they've got new cost tools. Because GFIBS also provides you down for the people, and for instance, down at the installation property management parts of it, they can understand how much things cost, and they can see cost management. So when they can look in GFIBS, they can see how much they're spending, for instance, how to mow lawns. They've got those kind of cost accounting type capabilities inside of GFIBS, which is something that none of the other services have. Big to this, too, that goes with it, if you see on the bottom yellow line, and again, it wasn't to test your eyes, we've placed resources against it. That's the first time the Army, underneath the CFO Act and underneath GIPR and all the other policies, has placed dollars in the program and in the budget against this, an initiative to ensure that we now take cost management and financial improvement seriously. Next slide. Just to give you an idea, we're initially, I told you about quick wins. We're going to go after all the air assets. Believe it or not, the Army has more air assets and more boats than the Navy and more air assets than the Air Force. Okay? So we've got, that's part of our challenges. So we're going to go out and look at some of these different types of things. These are examples of the types of things we're going to do, existence and completeness, and ensure these things are all properly recorded, not ourselves, but with the acquisition community, the material command communities, and the installation folks, showing them how the documentation is required to ensure that they're proper stewards of what they have, and they've got it properly recorded, so when auditors do come out, they understand their role in it, and they understand how to be audited. Next slide. Okay. I want to talk a little more about what we've all been talking about, resource-informed decisions, and about how we account for our dollars and how we start taking, maybe instead of just giving that 20% cut of efficiencies across the board, that we start looking at things in terms of what it costs, and not that always what cost will drive our decision, it will inform our decisions. That we, in terms of managing costs, will do the things that are good for the enterprise as well as good for their own individual mission that they have. Next slide. And again, it's not showing up real good in here, but what I want to talk about is we're taking an approach, and I've stole one thing I plagiarized, so Cecilia will see a lot of your slides in here. And the folks who did a great presentation just yesterday on cost management and cost-informed decisions. The key being that we're placing it inside doctrine and policy. We're not just putting it out there saying, okay, we want to be cost-informed. We've got the Secretary of Defense and the far right one just put out in his efficiency directives that you will start making cost-benefit analysis on every single unresourced decision that you've got. So before you resource things, that you'll start looking at the cost of them. You weigh those against the benefits before we make decisions to spend funding against it. The Army led the way on this already. We had put that one as the Undersecretary of the Army and the Vice had signed a similar memo back last December on the same thing. And again, it's not to stop great ideas or what the Army needs, but it's to inform those. So we're doing those types of things, and I could talk about some more things in terms of doctrinally how we're changing. But what we realize across the .mlpf, we can't just dictate to tell people we're going to start doing these. Go to the next slide. We've got to start getting people to do it. You've heard people, the panel, start talking about it. But to make sure that our leaders and the individuals out at the installation level up through the commands understand what cost-benefit analysis are, understand what cost management is, our initiative is to ensure that the training is in place. That we start going back down and we start individually training. The DASA CE, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Cost and Economic Analysis, during the last 6 months, trained nearly 1,000 people inside the Pentagon to review and how to do cost-benefit analysis. We are incorporating those into the training inside TRADOC, down at the finance school, into the curriculum to ensure, again, as we start talking about how to do requirements, how to do those things through TRADOC, that we ensure the individuals understand how we expect it to be done, but also train individuals as leaders to management throughout the basic courses and career courses as to why it's important. Part of that initiative tied the .mlpf together. Again, trying to get to achieving readiness at best value. One of the pieces of this, understanding it's not only training, it's education too. One of the courses that General Durbin will talk significantly about is the enterprise perspective we give. We're training very senior leaders down at North Carolina. We include a cost management piece in the curriculum down at where I think every single 4-star and 3-star has gone through, and now 2 stars, to ensure they understand what cost management, cost-informed decisions are. In addition to that, we've got a course we've implemented down at the Naval Postgraduate School, and hoping even at times to incorporate part of that curriculum elsewhere in the Army, to train those, if you will, the black belt type leaders, the individual's education to go back. Trade Ops got several of those inside their command. So when they look at requirements generation, they understand the benefit, cost management aspects of bringing things into the Army. Next slide. Okay. Last piece of it, too, is we talked about, cost.mlpf, got to ensure we've got the tools to do it. Because one of the things you've already heard Terry Gerton and others talk about, they're trying to do some great initiatives, great things across the Army. So we've got to improve how we do resource-informed decisions. We've got to improve how we do PBBE. But we've also got to provide better tools. I've already talked about the General Funds Business Enterprise System, or GFIBS, or accounting system. It is a cost accounting system. It provides the broken down details of costs captured at the installation level as to what we're spending on things. That doesn't do any good if I don't know how to analyze it, I don't know how to make decisions on that. So with that, I've got other things like, and again, these are just examples through the cost performance portal. This thing is already up, but we're also putting a cost benefit analysis tool out there for the Army. It should be ready by December, which will help individual commands on unfinanced requirements or requirements that they see are so important to bring those back into the Army, showing that they've analyzed it, they've measured themselves the cost against the benefits that they're trying to provide to our Army. And so with that, I turn it back over to you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks to all the panelists. We've got about 25 minutes, so I'll hold my other remarks, but I'll open it now for any questions you might have of me or any of the panelists. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Again, the strategic sourcing briefing that we got from Material Enterprise folks affects everybody that's on a table. You can see on the slide that it affects all the organizations, all the commands. It's a CMO Quick Start business initiative that's in the business transformation plan. And my question is, when you see the lines going down to the organizations, and then you look at to SICE, the services and infrastructure, they have services, as far as their enterprise. And because it's a CMO initiative, I'm asking the panel here to postulate, how is that going to be managed, and how is that going to be coordinated and synthesized?
I'll give it a first shot. It's all going to focus, at least from a procuring, contracting, acquisition perspective, on the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Services. So that integration function will need to be across the Army staff with each one of the key stakeholders that have spoken here today. So a part of the analysis and a part of the metrics for this in terms of how this strategic spend's being executed will rest on the responsibility of that DAS organization.
If I could, I'll answer real quick. You go back to the three principles associated with the integrated management system: alignment, integration, and innovation. So are we properly aligned to do this, or do we have it in separate areas? Is that right, or should we realign how that is? Might be how we look at one piece of it. The other is, what do we have in the capability of integrating, okay, as Ed said, across the entire Army management enterprise or across the staff? And then third is, okay, how do we engender some innovation to get at that? And so I think from the CMO's perspective, he would just be looking at, are we looking to ensure we have the right alignment? Do we have the ability to properly horizontally integrate, because that alignment gives you the vertical integration? And then if so, what are we doing to get some innovation here, rather than just trying to do it, faster or harder the old way? Terry, or? Ma'am?
So the only other piece I would add there, I think, if you look at the command service advocates, for example, IMCOM, with the focus